Hello pinball makers, my name is Anthony Van Winkle, and in this video we'll be updating MPF+GMC to the latest versions, and then setting up some slides for our base mode with some player variables and score, and for a special mode that starts, shows some variables, and then closes. So let's get started. MPF and GMC are in active development, which means there's constantly updates that have new features, bug fixes, and other improvements. So it's a good idea from time to time to update your versions to make sure you have the latest and greatest. Fortunately, it's pretty straightforward to do. We'll start with MPF. So we'll start by opening PowerShell and activating our virtual environment. Now we can type pip list to see all of the modules that are installed in our environment. And we see we have MPF 080 dev 6. We want to upgrade to dev 7. So we'll do pip install --upgrade to say that we already have MPF installed, but we want to upgrade to the latest version. --pre, because 080 was not released yet. It will be soon, but we'll do pre for now. MPF. So now pip will look for the latest dev release of MPF, and it'll upgrade to it. And see, we're uninstalling dev 6. And we've successfully installed dev 7. And we just type pip list, and now we see MPF 080 dev 7. Easy peasy. Next, we'll update GMC. Now, the Godot asset library is supposed to manage this, and it does have an update button, but I couldn't get it to work, and trying to reinstall it from the asset library caused all kinds of problems, so we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. So we'll open up our internet browser, and we'll go to the GMC repository on GitHub, which is github.com/missionpinball/MPF-GMC. Now, if you want the latest and greatest cutting-edge code, you can use this green button to download zip, but we're going to go with a stable, verified release. So on the right here, we see releases 0.1.3 is the latest release. And we click on that, and we'll go to the release information page. And here you can see all of the changes and all of the updates, all the bug fixes, and there's a zip of the source code. So we'll click on that to download it. So when we open up the zip file and we see we have MPF+GMC 013, and in there we have an add-ons folder, and in the add-ons folder is MPF+GMC. So what we'll do is in another window, we will go to our pinball game folder, Happy Pinball here, and the add-ons folder, and we still have MPF+GMC. So we're just going to take the one that we downloaded and copy it over here and replace the existing MPF+GMC with the new one. It's important that you not, we want to overwrite all the files. It's important that you do not have Godot open at this point in the process. I should have said that earlier. But Godot can get confused if you're overwriting files in the background, and sometimes it will crash, or sometimes it will save over the files that you overwrote. So don't have Godot open when you do this. But you just drag that over, MPF+GMC, and we're good to go. If you've been doing these videos from the beginning and initially installed a version of GMC before 1.3, there's one more step that we need to do because there was a breaking change introduced. If you already have 1.3 or later, you can skip on to the next chapter. But real quick, we will open up our project in Godot. And if we look at our tracked slide here, if we try to run it, it will crash with an error that says script inherits from native type control, so it can't be assigned to node 2D. Now, this is because the MPF carousel class changed from a node 2D to a control, but the scene is still saved with the node 2D in it. So it's real easy to fix. We just go to the scene tree here where we have the MPF carousel, right click and change type. And we look for MPF carousel. And we reselect MPF carousel and save. That's all there is to it. Well, all we have to do is update the underlying class name with the new MPF carousel to get that to fix. And now we can run the scene and it'll load just fine. So this change applies to MPF carousel as well as children, conditional children, and a couple of others. I'll put a link in the description of this video on the steps if you have some other scenes that need to be updated. But this is a one-time thing. I'm sorry, but it's worth the change. So just quickly update your nodes that have that script inherits from type control, and you'll be all set. And now we can move along. MPF organizes itself into modes, where every mode controls any behavior in the pinball game, like shots, scoring, variables, lights, and all that stuff. So modes can be stacked on top of each other to allow you to control different behaviors and turn things on and off as the game is playing by enabling or disabling different modes. All of the things that happen during a game are built on top of what's called the base mode. The base mode is built into MPF, and whenever a player's turn starts, base starts, and when their turn ends, base ends, and everything else happens on top of base. So the first thing we need to do is create a base slide, which will hold our core UI, like the score, the player number, the ball number, and anything else that's fundamental that will always be there, and then we can build on top of that with our different modes and functionality. So we'll open up Godot, open up our project, and in the file system here under slides, we've got our track slide. We'll right-click on slides and create new scene. And the node of this scene is going to be an MPF slide because we're going to make a slide. So MPF slide is right there. And we're going to call this one base. We can call it anything. It doesn't have to be the name of the mode. In fact, just to be fun, we'll call it base slide. Just to remind you that this name of the slide doesn't have to be the name of the mode. It's a convenient practice, but we'll call it base slide. Okay. And in the 2D view here, we see we've got our normal blue box that indicates the size of the screen. So let's start with something. If you've got a picture that you want to use as a background or a video, you can do that. We're just going to go with a nice color rectangle. And let's lay it out. Let's set it to be the size of our screen, which is what, 1280 by 1024. And we'll give it a nice, how about a green color? It's kind of an ugly green color. That's pretty good. We'll go with that. That's a nice color there. Okay. Now the most important thing to have in your base slide is going to be the score. So we will add a new node of MPF variable. And we'll drop it in there. And like before, we want to see what it looks like without having a value there. So in the text, we're just going to put in some number. Okay, and it's really tiny and in the corner, which we don't like. But here we can do a little bit with Godot's layout engine. So we could just manually say where we want it to be, but we can also take advantage of the fact that we are in containers here. So one thing that we'll want to do is we'll want to set our base slide, which currently has no dimensions. Let's explicitly set our base slide to be the size that we want. And that's under transform size 1280 by 1024. So now you can see the outline of that base slide. So then our color rect here, rather than specifying an explicit size for that, we can set layout mode anchors and the anchors full rect, and it will automatically expand to fill the size of its parent. Similarly, with MPF variable, we can go down to the layout and we can set it to also use anchors, but the anchors we'll choose for this will be horizontal center wide, which means it will fill the full width and it will be centered horizontally, rather centered vertically and fill the whole horizontal width. Now, there it is. So you see the text there. Well, the text is too small, so let's make that bigger. Go to theme overrides, font sizes. How about 120? That's nice. Okay. Now the text is still aligned to the left, but the box for the text is full width. So we go up to our text here and say horizontal align center. So now we don't have to explicitly state where we want the text to be. We say where we want it to be relative to the parent. And since that base slide is a certain size, everything inside of it will flow accordingly. Just to be a little bit of fun, let's spruce up this text a bit. Let's go to the constants and set the outline size to maybe 10 pixels. There we go. That gives it a little bit more pop. And try a shadow. Yeah, it's subtle, but that looks pretty good. It just pops a little bit more. And there's the score. Well, it's not a score yet. Right now, it's just some numbers. So we've selected the variable and we go back up to the top. And we can see the variable type is current player. And we're going to want to set that to be the current player's score. So we type score in the variable name. Scores are long, so we want to comma separate it. And when the player has no score, it's traditional to show 2 zeros rather than 1 to indicate that it's the score. So we'll set the minimum digits to 2. And all of the rest of the stuff is good. So we'll call it. The name MPF variable for the node isn't helpful, so let's do player underscore score. So we can see that it is a player variable of the score. And that's pretty straightforward. But of course, right now we don't have any way of getting a score, so let's go into MPF and set up some base mode. So we've opened up Visual Studio Code, and there's a couple of things that we're going to do. First, we're going to set up some switches that will represent targets on the playfield that we can use to hit and earn a score. And that's in the config switches. Right now, we've just got cabinet switches and the trough. So we're going to add a couple of playfield switches here just to play around with. If you already have a game designed, you may have already done this. So we'll have a pop bumper. We'll actually have two pop bumpers. So we'll have S bumper left with an empty number, S bumper right with an empty number, and we'll have a lane that we can choose to start a mode. So we'll call that left lane with an empty number. So we can save that, and then we want to be able to control those with the keyboard. So we'll go to our GMC config. And under the keyboard section, we will add some easy ways to hit that. So we'll do 1 for our left lane, switch S left lane, and let's do 8 and 9 for our bumpers. So 8 equals switch S bumper left, and 9 equals switch S bumper right. All right, and that's good enough for now, so we can save that. Now we need to make our base mode. So under the modes folder, you see we have attract and our attract config, and we have base and our base config. I don't remember doing that, but I guess we already did. Oh no, this came from the MPF init. So MPF generated this base mode for us because it knows we're going to need it. So now we can just set up a couple of things that we'll want to do. Modes in MPF can control any number of behaviors and variables, and it's a good idea to isolate modes to a specific thing. That way you can enable and disable things very discreetly without having to, kludge around with different conditions and all that stuff. So for example, we want to have the pop bumpers be able to score points, and you could just put that in the base mode, put in some shots and put in the bumpers, but that means whenever the game is running, those bumpers are always going to be doing that behavior, which might be good for most of the time, but if you're in a wizard mode or a multi-ball or something, you might want the bumpers to do something else. So we're going to make a new mode called bumpers that creates the bumper behavior we want and use the base mode to start and stop that bumper mode. So we're going to make a new file. I'll say config version is 6, of course. And this is a mode config file, so we need a mode declaration setting. And the basic things about a mode are when does it start, when does it stop, and what priority does it run at. Start events, start mode bumpers, and stop events, stop mode bumpers. Now this is a convention, and it is very helpful. You can technically use any event. You could use a shot hit event. You could use a player score or player variable event. You could use a shot group. You can use any type of event to start a mode, but I discourage that because you want to be very clear about when your modes are starting and stopping. And if you only use start mode and stop mode events, then it's easy to see in the logs why the mode is starting or why the mode isn't starting, who's starting it, and how it's triggering down. If you're just using random events to start and stop modes, you're going to get behaviors that you can't really identify very easily. So it's best to just use start mode and stop mode, and then use an event player to call those from whatever you want to have trigger them. And the priority is the priority that the mode will run at. Now, like I said, all the modes are stacked on top of base mode. So the higher priority a mode is, the more important it is. So if say 2 different modes or both have shots on the same switch, the higher priority mode will receive that switch event and handle its shot behavior first, and then all the way down to the lower ones. So we'll just set 200 for this one as a baseline because we want it to run above base, but it's not that important. So we'll set up some shots. Now, shots are an MPF device. They're sort of a conceptual abstract thing that is really triggered by any switch or event to do something. So we like to use shots because shots can build more than just a switch. You can have a switch hit score points, but a shot can be enabled, it can be disabled, it can have different states. It can be part of a group that rotates different states. You can have lights that correspond to it. You can have different variables, different conditions when it works and doesn't work. So setting up a shot is a way of saying, I want to trigger something off of this switch, but I want to have more control over it. So we're going to make a shot called bumper left, which will get hit when the bumper left switch is hit. So we do switch S bumper left, and we'll have a shot for bumper right with switch S bumper right. Now, for our purposes here, we want to score points when the bumpers are hit, but we don't care which bumper is hit. Any bumper will do. So we're going to put those two shots in a group and then trigger our behavior on the shot group. So if any shot in the group gets hit, do this thing. So we'll go shot groups, and we'll call this shot group bumpers. And the shots in this group will be bumper left and bumper right. Okay. So now we have the shots. They're going to automatically be enabled because we're not specifying when they should enable or disable, and we don't have any light set up, but they will get hit. And we want something to happen there. We're going to get some points. So we'll set up the variable player because the score is a player variable. And we say when bumpers hit. And this is inherent behavior of shot groups. When a shot in a shot group is hit, it will post the name of the shot group _ hit. Same thing with a shot. When a shot is hit, it will do the shot name _ hit. So we could do bumper left hit or bumper right hit. But again, we don't care which bumper, so we're going to do anything in the group bumpers hit. And when bumpers is hit, the variable we want to increment is score. And we want to increment it by, let's say, 1,000 points. So we can do that. And that's fine for 1,000, but when your numbers get bigger, it can be really hard to figure out what it is. So we have a neat little hack here where we can use underscores to delineate numbers. So that way we can see very clearly, very instantly, it's 1,000, or if it was 1,000,000, or if it was 1,000,000,000. You're not having to sit there, count the zero. So you can use, in most places in MPF, you can use underscores like this to create your numbers. It makes it just a little bit easier to read. And that's our bumpers mode. So we'll go into modes, make a new folder called bumpers. In that folder, a new folder called config. And in that folder, we're going to save this as bumpers.yaml. The mode folder and the YAML file should always have the name of the mode. That's how MPF keeps track of it. So we save it. We've got bumpers.yaml. And just because there's a mode file there doesn't mean MPF is going to use it, because you might have a mode that you're working on that's disabled or something, doesn't work right. So we need to go into our main config file here and say that bumpers is a mode that we want to be enabled. Bumpers, like that. And now we can go to our base mode and say, let's start it. So we set up an event player, our base mode, and with mode base started. So mode base started means after the base mode has started up, it's done its initializations and it's ready to go. Started in the past tense. And for this, we're going to do a list, because right now we only have bumpers, but we're going to have a lot of stuff starting because, again, base is the first thing that happens, and everything that happens when the ball starts comes from base. So there's going to be a lot of things here eventually. So we'll just set ourselves up for success by making it a list. And that event will be start mode bumpers, which is what we defined in bumpers YAML as the start event. So start mode bumpers. So when base starts, bumpers will start. By the same token, we'll have mode base will stop mode bumpers. Now, this is an important distinction. This is some place where people can get caught up on stuff. You notice that base started is in the past tense because that's after the mode has started. Base will stop is in the future tense. It's before it stops. There is an event mode base stopped, but when mode base is stopped, the mode is stopped. So it's not doing anything anymore. So if you have an event player here for mode base stopped, it's never going to happen because the mode is already done before it gets to that. So starting, you want to use started. For stopping, you want to use will stop because that code will be executed before the mode stops. And of course, we need a slide player to show our base slide. So we'll do slide player, mode base started. And we called this one base slide. You may have called it base, you may have called it anything else, but base slide is what we've called it. And that's all there is to it, I think. So let's pop on in and see how it goes. We've got PowerShell here already in our environment. So we'll go to our folder. And there we are. So we'll do MPF-XT and start up MPF. And it's ready to go. And we'll go into Godot and we will start the game. And we are good to go. Except I did forget one step, and that is a start button to actually start the game. So let's take care of that real quick. Back in our Visual Studio Code, we will need to have a start button. And that is a cabinet switch. And so down here, we'll just call it start, S_start. And its number is nothing. But here's something important. There's an MPF concept called tags. You can use this for your own personal use, but there are a few specific tags that MPF needs, like we did with the flippers. This one is going to be start. So this says, hey, this is a start button. So when this button is pressed, try to start a game. Now that try to start a game means there may be things like you need money or some balls are missing or, it's in service mode, things like that. So it's not always going to start, but generally it's a request to start a game. So we'll go into our GMC, and I like to use the Enter key as the start button because it's nice and solid. So we'll say Enter equals switch S start and save that. All right, now let's try this again. We'll start up MPF. We will go here, and we will start in GMC. We've got our track mode running, and we hit Enter. And nothing happens. Oh, there's no balls. Like I said, you need to have some balls in the machine before we'll start a game. All right, one last step. Okay, so we do have a trough set up. Go back to our switches. We have a trough, and it's where the balls go. And we do have a ball device for the trough that says that this is the trough and the home and the drain. But since we're running in virtual mode, those switches aren't active, and MPF uses those switches to know how many balls are in the machine. So we do need to put in a little special something to say, hey, MPF, when we're running in virtual mode, pretend there are balls in the trough so we can start a game. And that's done. We're going to do this in the main config file because this is sort of a high-level config, and that's called virtual platform start active switches. It's a mouthful, but it's very clear. These are the switches that will start active when we boot up in the virtual platform. It's specific to the virtual platform, so it has no effect on your actual game. When you're in a physical machine, you will still need balls in there in order to work. But we'll set S trough 1, S trough 2, S trough 3 as active switches when the game starts. So that way we know that there are some balls there. And this is also just a good reminder, if something's going wrong, something's not behaving right, look at the logs. We can see right here, the logs are very clearly telling us, ball controller denies game start, not enough balls, 0 found. So especially if you're going to ask on the forums or on the Google groups or something, having these logs available and looking at the errors, first of all, it might have a nice answer right there. And second of all, it will help other people to identify what's going on or what the game is or is not doing. So that's a great way to go. Okay, so now we have our virtual platform start active switches. So when we start up the game, it will think there are 3 balls in the machine. Third time's the charm. And there we go. It's only got 1 digit and it should have been 2. Maybe we didn't save. But we set 8 and 9 as our bumper switches. So if we hit 8 or 9, look at that. The score is increasing. It's automatically comma separating it, and it's automatically centering it, and it's got a nice outline and shadow. So this is some good looking score. Let's see why it wasn't 2 digits real quick. Oh, because it set min digits to 1. Okay, so min digits will make that 2, and then it will show up as 2. All right, so there's the base mode, there's the score. Let's add some more stuff.